There you go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce our second guest artist, lecturer, scholar of the week, Paul Brody. Paul is an artist in residence here. I'm going to hand over very shortly to Joel Rubin, ethnomusicologist, music professor, director of performance here, and he's going to frame this for us a little bit. I've been in cahoots with Paul this week. We've been talking through his work as a composer, sound artist, intersecting with language, melody, popular music, and we've been sharing lots of ideas. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm delighted to have you here. I'd like to acknowledge Professor Lee Watkins, Director of the International Library of African Music, the institute that houses the recordings that have influenced the Black Panther soundtrack, etc., has joined us for today and the whole week. But thank you for being here. Don't worry about Top Hat. There isn't a register for today. And if you're worried about attendance for Monday, I've been offline for nearly the whole week. It'll be fixed, okay? So don't worry. It's not going to be pushed to your devices today, but it will be again next week. We're here to listen to Paul. So I'll hand over to Joel Rubin to welcome Paul again. Thanks, Joel.
Hi, everybody. So one of the things, I wear a lot of hats at UVA. I'm an ethnomusicologist. I run the music performance program. I teach music history. I teach ethnomusicology. And I direct the klezmer ensemble, which is one of our 20 or 25 performing ensembles. We put on a concert every semester in Old Cabell. And one of the things that I do is every year I invite a well-known artist from the outside, you know, from either from North America or actually this is now the fourth time that I've been able to invite somebody who lives in Berlin. I have a close working relationship with the music scene in Berlin, and Paul and I have known each other for many years. He's a really interesting case because we have 9 co-sponsors for this residency. So I do these residency because he's so broad in terms of what he does, even just in music, right? He's done classical music, he's done jazz, he does klezmer, he does Balkan music, he's done Turkish music, Romani music, so-called gypsy music, fusions of all different kinds, electroacoustic music, but then moving outwards from music into musical theater, both as a composer and a performer and an actor, with the spoken word interface between the spoken word and music, sound installations, radio documentaries, radio or what do you call them, Hörspiele, which are like sort of sound collages, radio art. Did I leave anything out?
That's good enough.
It's a lot of stuff. So it's been very interesting because he can speak to so many different people across grounds. So he's speaking to, you know, the drama students and to the creative writing students and to the Jewish studies students and to the German studies students and so forth, and to the music students, obviously. So, so his original training was in classical music, and then he did a master's in what was called third stream music, which is a kind of fusion of jazz and classical, and then has been involved in all kinds of popular music, from Latin dance bands to playing in casinos. He played with Barry White and loved Unlimited.
That orchestra.
Smokey 1970s soul singer. So all kinds of different stuff in terms of popular music and fusions of popular music. So I will turn it over to Paul.
Hi. Thank you two for the invite.
Thank you.
What an honor. And what an honor is to talk with you people about some of my sound explorations and adventures. Usually I talk about this stuff at home in the kitchen with my kids and the cats, except for the kids leave. So we're having some photos taken so I can prove that you're here. It's interesting how the students, there's like clumps of students here. There's a student clump here and here, and then there's scattered students here. I wonder what that means. Are they afraid of you? Or yes. You don't want to get closer. Silence. Okay, let's see. I thought a lot about what can we do? We have about 40 minutes with a little presentation. And I thought about what can I say? What can I give you? What's the take home? What might be interesting? What might wake you up rather than make you a little bit tired? Everybody's overworked probably. What can I do? What can I share with you? What are you people doing? Are you people in literature? Are you interested in sciences? Is this a whole mix of people? I'd like to get a little energy from you to give me something. This clump over here, what's the majority of interest in this clump? Don't be chewing on your pen. Tell me something. Somebody scream something.
It's a mix.
It's a mix. Who said that? It's a mix. Big mix. Okay. Okay, a big mix. Well, we're going to do, I'll give you a mix then. Okay? I'm interested in this strange thing called narration. For some reason, it sounds a little hokey, but I can't get it out of my mind. What is narration? Can somebody tell you? What is that? Narration. Is it a mix? Come on, somebody take a risk. Tell me what narration might be. This word that everybody knows what it means, right? How would you define it?
Describing what's happening in a video.
Describing what's happening in a video. In the video, oh yeah, okay, you had a... Telling a story.
I think it's like telling a story from like an omnipotent outside perspective.
Excuse me?
It's like telling a story from like an outside omnipotent perspective.
Oh, an outside, yeah, the narrator, the person telling it from above or from an outside perspective. Okay? I thought a lot about what narration is. I come from music. I learned trumpet. See? I play pretty well. Or classical. Yeah, stuff like that. Yes, thank you. That's the most amount of notes I've missed. How many notes can you miss in 3 seconds? Okay, that's where I come from. And I thought, how can I apply my learning, my skills as a musician, as an improviser, and as a composer in a broader sense? Because I'm also interested in this thing called narration. And then I think, what is narration? And as a composer who's interested in stories, in narration, I wrestle with this every day. And I've come to the conclusion that narration is nothing else but a way to get from here to here. And maybe back, or maybe on the way back you lose yourself and find yourself in a different place. And that journey going from here to here, the stuff of that journey can be many things. And when I got this idea, I started to have more fun with my music and with stories. The stuff of narration, what can carry you from here to here? I'm going to show you a little example of an early... Joel mentioned that Paul does this, he does theater, he works in jazz, he composes this and stuff. There's a risk in this because it can look like you do a lot of different things. I do something in terms of narration, which I call sonic logic. And that is, whatever the sound is, it has a logic to it. The minute I play 2 notes on the trumpet, the minute you hear footsteps, there's a logic to those footsteps. Are the footsteps getting louder or softer? If you hear somebody speaking and there's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of between sounds. These between sounds is a rich place of storytelling. It's a narration in itself. Between sounds, that has a narration in itself. The silence, if we don't say anything, hearing this electronic fan, hearing this shh, it tells you something about the room. There's narration in that, an idea in that. So I have a little thing I like to use. I call it sonic logic. This sonic logic, the interjection of spoken word in music, I call that a subculture. And so between spoken word and melody, that's where I have a lot of fun. That's my sandbox. That's my playground. And I call that my subculture. I want to mention a few things. For me, stories carry the DNA. Stories and melody carry the DNA of a culture. How do we pass on a culture? What are our traditions? Well, do people still eat together without electronic devices? We eat together is one of the pretty good ritual of togetherness. What other rituals do we have? What are the things do we have to pass on a culture? Well, I made this food. Oh, you make that. Where did you learn to make that dish? Well, I learned it from so-and-so and from my neighbor or from my grandmother or that came from somewhere. So that's what I call passing on the DNA of a culture. And stories and melody is a rich exchange of this DNA. And we can't seem to get rid of, no matter how modern we get with all our toys, tools, electronic devices, hi-hats, top hats, Audiologic, Ableton Live. It's all about tools actually in a way, tools of narration. Who here does not have a story on their device? Okay? I'm going to show you two ways of looking at sound through two very short examples from composers who inspired me. One is John Cage. Who has heard of John Cage? Yes, John Cage. If you could give John Cage one word to synopsize, is that a word? Is that synopsize? Can you synopsize John Cage? Somebody? Yes? Landscape, thank you. Are you a plant? You don't look like a plant. So, yes, landscape, environment. John Cage said, listen, this is music. And Joel puts on an example from one of his archive examples from a klezmer CD recorded in 1926. Yes? And then Noel comes in singing a melody that he heard you playing for an example, and the coming together of the melody he's singing and the klezmer music plus the footsteps and whatever else, the air conditioning. John Cage said, this is music. Listen, open your ears. That's a perspective on sound. The other, I guess we could say it's like a belly button. The other side of it is a composer who I love, Charles Ives. Who knows Charles Ives, the great Charles Ives? Can you tell me something about Charles? Oh, okay, but okay. Anybody got a little thing on Charles Ives? Who said, my God, what has sound got to do with music? Charles Ives was one of America's great composers on the transcendental time, coming from the late German Romantic. He had the skills of these European composers with counterpoint, Brahmsian harmony. He had done his homework as a great composer. At the same time, he loved folk music. He lived in a small town in Connecticut, in New England. And he had a similar thing to John Cage. He would listen to, for example, a well-known piece is two country bands playing at a town festival, at a weekend town festival. And these two country bands are playing. One is maybe a marching band, the other's a fiddle group, playing their music, amateur musicians. And he would take the sounds he heard on this one street corner when he heard one band here and the marching band here, the fiddle band here and the marching band here, and he went home, and with his European-based compositional skills, he composed this music that he wrote the wrong notes in. He wrote the clashes in he heard acoustically from these two bands playing on different parts of, on different corners. So it's kind of the inside-out John Cage. He took that environment and put that into his compositions. And as a person who works with radio and sound installation, I really enjoyed drawing inspiration from these two poles. Here's a little thing I did for the Jewish Museum. They wanted something, the Jewish Museum in Berlin wanted some kind of a sound composition dealing with environment and environment in Berlin. And this is an easy thing to do. A marketplace in Berlin where there's a lot of people speaking German, Arab, Lebanese, Turkish, people selling things at the market. And I did not change much. I just walked through and I recorded 1 minute. 1 minute. I must admit, the very end of it, I kind of cut and put something there. But this is really how it was. And I tried to bring out the melodic, the musical feeling of this market. And thank you. Bye. That was the punk version, right? Oh. Sorry, which one? Okay.
This one just on the left.
This is a minute long. Yep. Okay, this is an inspiration from Charles Ives, in which I took samples of some Delta blues guitar, and I recorded something with my band, and I used what Carl Sandburg has this collection of. That's a longer story. Carl Sandburg, a poet who was also a collector of stories and folk tales and folk songs. He has this collection of folk rhymes, folk melodies, and I put this with the samples into a composition for one of my, it's kind of a cartoon vision of America for a person lost living in Berlin. This is Charles Ives' influence because I'm taking these folk elements and putting them into a composition. This is going to be loud too. It's okay. This is a hunting song. This is a hunting song, and anybody wants to sing along. David Moss. Enough already. Let's see. Okay, so we have John Cage listening to the environment, and we have Charles Ives listening to the environment, bringing that home and creating art from it, representing the environment, recreating the environment in a compositional form. Okay, let's see. Any questions so far? Come on, spit them out. Anybody vehemently disagree with me? I like that. Okay, I want to interject one thing, because I've never really put these ideas together for anybody, except for my kids and my cats, and then I give up. Whatever I'm working on, I give it to the radio station, or it's put into a sound installation or whatever. And I wanted to make sure one thing, because all these things are so organized. I try to be organized. Do I seem organized? Don't answer that. Now you're really silent. Okay. This work is very associative. In other words, if I'm working on a story, if I'm composing a melody, then maybe if there's an idea that comes to my mind, if there's something I hear that I don't know why it belongs there, but I put it there. And I like to add this because this is something that fascinates me with all my work with working with musicians and working with giving interviews and recording people. And that's, I call it the aesthetics of misunderstanding. Things we misunderstand, we put away. My God, today we have spell check, we have this check, I can correct all my bad intonation on the trumpet with a push of a button. I can quanticize, quanticize, colorify, solidify, everything is size, everything. So nothing is spelt wrong. The grammar is perfect. So I have this thing I like to bring out in my work called the aesthetics of misunderstanding. We often put these things away. Mistakes, mumblings are cut out. But if you're interested in art, if you're interested in literature, maybe these between moments can be a place of inspiration. And I often find these moments while working. I discover them. I'm often about to cut them out. Somebody's mumbling. But that mumbling has a great emotional quality that really tells you about how the person feels about the story they might be saying. Interjections, interruptions, awkward silences, vocal gestures, meaningless comments, unwanted interpretations, collapsed conversations. This happened. This is not uncomfortable moments. Like I'm bad at this program, and for some reason that slid over there, and I decided not to try to fix it. I thought that was pretty cool. Etc. Yeah. Let's keep going. My first sound installation was at the Jewish Museum in Berlin. I played trumpet for the opening of some art exhibit there, and it went like this. It was very corny because it's a Jewish museum. You know, Jewish music often sounds like this. Now, have you heard that kind of sound before? And then this was the opening of an exhibit, and so I did something very corny. You know this melody? Do you know that melody? What's that melody called? How do you know that melody? Where's that from? Anyway, I put that melody. It's a great announcing melody. It's grandiose. And just to be really corny for the opening of this exhibit, I put that into within a Jewish scale. And after, that was the first bad thing I did. The second bad thing I did was at the party. At the party, there was the boss of the Jewish Museum, and that's a big museum. That's like the second most visited museum in Berlin. Huh?
Did anybody protest?
No. They liked it.
So
They're corny.
did anybody get that? So that's also from Zarathustra. So
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
spoke Zarathustra by Richard Strauss, who was an important Germanic composer, but he was also he was the highest musician in the Nazi administration in the early years of the Nazi years.
Yeah.
And that particular melody has anybody ever seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? Right? Well, that's where you probably heard it, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, right? It's one of the most famous films ever made 50 years ago this year.
Yeah. So
that's why in Germany some people might have said, well, you can't do that with Strauss.
Yeah.
Or, whatever.
the second bad thing I did was even worse. There was the boss of the museum and the head curator of the second floor of the contemporary department at the Jewish Museum, and I said, you know what? Maybe I had one sip of wine too much, and I said, you know that over next door there's a Jewish museum there, that the cafe at the party was across the street from the museum. That's full of stuff. That's just full of stuff and statues and pictures and relics. But Jewish culture, that's about stories and melody, because we didn't have, we were always on the run, diaspora, and we couldn't carry stuff with us. We had our stories. We could carry our stories, which we passed on, and our melodies, which we are still playing. And I thought, ooh, I should go. I should probably go. And then they looked at each other and they said, well, why don't you propose something? And this was a great opportunity to, there was a challenge. And so I'd like to share with you something as the start of a kind of a new phase of work for me, and that is working with voice melody. Does anybody have any thoughts about voice melody? Think about this strange thing? I'll tell you something very strange. We are taught not to listen to voice melody. We are taught to listen to, did you hear what I said? Do you know what I mean? That's logical. You're not thinking like me. What I'm saying is logical. We're taught to pay attention to the words. But try this for a little game if you're interested, actually, both in the sciences and in the arts. I call that unhooking semantics. Unhook the words. Try to listen to somebody. It's a bit rude to do that. Listen to somebody, but don't listen to the words. Forget the words. Listen to the person's voice. It's almost embarrassing. It's almost like kind of checking out somebody's body. It's almost like wrong. Try that sometime. Don't try it on me. The voice carries, the voice is the sonic representation of you for the most part. 99% of the time. What other sonic representation do we have of us? Well, I got my trumpet, thank goodness. If you think about it, that's kind of deep. That is you, your voice, the quality. The voice is both very impersonal, because you can hear that maybe I'm a little bit dyslexic, unpersonal, impersonal, I confuse these things. You can hear from my how are you? How is everybody? Yeah, Virginia, yeah, California. This in the back, you can hear. If you got a little, check it out. It's California, this wide A. My mother was a refugee from Vienna. I speak a bit funny a little bit, and I also live in Berlin, and so I might not say Berlin, I might say Berlin. So where I've been, how my parents might have talked, etc., my family, you can hear that in a person's voice. That's what I call the more impersonal. The personal side is, from me, you can hear, when a person speaks, you can hear about how old they are. You can hear something about their emotional state. Nervous, not nervous, extroverted, introverted. You can hear a lot of deep personal emotional information is in a voice. I found that fascinating. A person with an accent, for example. When I speak German, I have such an atrocious American accent, especially when I get excited. Then the Californian comes out. German with a Californian accent is not taken seriously, not because of my words, but because of my voice melody. When somebody comes from somewhere else, is anybody here from other places? From somewhere? Spain? Somebody comes from Spain. Where are you from? Madrid. Madrid. See? Huh? Are you a plant?
Sorry?
Nothing. Are you a plant? Because I said Spain. You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Perhaps when you speak English, you're bringing in the voice melody from what they call your mother tongue. Do they say that in English? They say that in German. Yeah? I can't even remember. You're bringing a melody from across the world here into English and into American English. And does anything from Madrid come out when you get more emotional and speak English?
I think in Spanish.
You think in Spanish?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Translate that to Spanish.
Okay.
So like my syntax, my grammar.
Okay. Wow, but you I don't hear much of a Spanish accent. You have a better ear than I do. Anyway, a person coming from another country, adopting another language, another culture, brings in a whole voice melody, a whole emotionality, a whole narrative from another culture, sonically, into an adopted culture. So this is what this exhibit's about. I interviewed people. There's this slippery thing called identity. What is identity? Don't worry, I'm not going to try to beatbox. But this slippery thing called identity, and what is that, and who are you, and how do you see your place here? So I interviewed 5 people, some in English, some in German, for this exhibit. How do you see your place in Germany? How do you see you as living in Germany? Tell me the story in a minute, through your work, through what you're interested in. And I'm going to give you a very small example. This is Minnie Kapoor from India. whose job is to who works with textiles. She brings traditional Indian colors and textiles into contemporary German and European design. And for those anthropologists, her voice melody is, speaking about color in India, is often pentatonic, like the black keys on the piano. Everybody's kind of going. Most children's melodies are pretty much pentatonic. When she goes into speaking about European or German design, she clearly goes into a chromatic, which is the notes very close to each other, not. That's chromatic. So pentatonic is an open sound, very melodic, like a folk melody. To chromatic, notes close together. And you can hear this in her story. So her voice melody is carrying, and she's speaking English with an accent. So her voice, her story, has many narratives. And I have a thing I like to call tickling the sensibilities. And if you have a narration going from here to here, like I said, the job of a composer, of a storyteller, of a filmmaker, of a poet, I think is more or less just to tickle your sensibilities, to wake you up, to break the hierarchy of listening or looking. I work with listening, to break that hierarchy. So check this out. And this composition is based on her voice melody, and you can hear her story.
I think you can never leave your first home. You never do. Even if you travel 10,000 miles away, and forever and forever. India is a part of my being, and you see it in my work. It can never be the German systematic typographical design you'll get from me. There will be something that is really different, and I can't. It's a part of me. It comes out of my hand. It can't be different, and that's where I realize India would always be there. But it happens, this change happens in the society where you live in, but the dreams, the wishes, they stay within you. And I had this color in me, and I brought it out on the shores. Orange, magenta, dark blue, green. There's so many colors, and then there's so many different textiles, the beauty about the work that I'm doing, what I really like, is restoring that old art, giving it a new language, adaptable to this place, to Europe.
Okay, I'll give you a couple examples to conclude. How I would do that, I would really write out the voice melody of the person. This is Danny Levy, a well-known filmmaker in Europe, and you can see Swiss talk there. See, but you don't have to be able to read music to decipher this. How do you? I started doing these kind of translations of voice melody and discovering things that dialect you can.